Welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. We would really appreciate if you could rate us, ideally with 5 stars, in the apps where you are listening to this podcast: Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, or any other app. This way more people would learn about the podcast and truth about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. My name is Artem, and here is the news. 418 days less the Russian invasion of Ukraine. A Russian human rights organization, Gulag.net, released videos in which Russian convicts from the Wagner group confessed to murdering Ukrainian children in Bakhmut and Soledar, reports Ukrainska Pravda. The human rights activists posted the testimonies of 2 former Wagner Group unit commanders who were recruited to join the mercenaries from Russian prisons. Both of them are pardoned and stay in Russia now. They gave testimonies in video and audio interviews telling the details of how they shot more than 20 Ukrainian children and teenagers, blew up a pit containing more than 50 wounded prisoners and their own soldiers who decided to stop fighting, and cleared up residential buildings, killing everyone, even the children. One of the mercenaries admits that he shot a 5-year-old girl in the head when they went to Soledar and Bakhmut. They claim that the command to clear up Bakhmut came from Wagner's head Yevgeny Prigozhin. He ordered that no one should be spared, neither elderly people nor children. One of the terrorists said that he had cleared up the basement of a 9-story building in Bakhmut where there were 300 to 400 civilians, 40 of whom were children. He added that he had no choice and that he had an order to kill everyone aged 15 and over. This happened in March 2023. Asked how many unarmed civilians they had killed in February 2023, one of the mercenaries replied that 15-year-old Ukrainians can hardly be called civilians. The Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine is investigating information about crimes committed by members of the Wagner private military company. Verkhovna Rada Commissioner for Human Rights Dmytro Lubinets said that 86% of the Ukrainian military released from Russian captivity informed about torture, reports Ukrainska Pravda. In an interview, Lubinets said that this was established not only by Ukraine but also by the International Human Rights Mission of the United Nations. They have approximately the same numbers. At the same time, the ombudsman refused to specify what kind of torture was involved. Lubinets stated that this is due to the fact that when Ukrainian high-ranking officials publicly voice such facts, the Russians begin to treat prisoners of war even more cruelly. He added that over the past 9 months, the Office of the Commissioner has received dozens of videos of public executions of Ukrainian military personnel by Russian soldiers. There are instances of beheadings, cutting off genitals, ears, nose, limbs, or phalanges on the hands, stressed Lubinets. According to him, some of the perpetrators of these crimes have been identified, and at least one person was punished. He died during a combat engagement with Ukrainian troops. As Lubinets states, Russia publicly distributes videos of executions of Ukrainian soldiers to maintain the degree of anti-Ukrainian hysteria within Russian society, also to convince its soldiers not to surrender to the armed forces of Ukraine and to intimidate the Ukrainian military, which is preparing for a counter-offensive. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, in his evening video address, informed that he held a meeting of the staff yesterday. They discussed the situation on the front line and the issue of supply of ammunition for the Ukrainian military. They not only talked about the supply from abroad in detail, but also everything related to manufacturing, both by the state and private companies. Zelensky added that Ukraine is already preparing for another Ramstein meeting. According to him, Kyiv expects decisions that will meet the prospects on the battlefield. It is very important to understand this. Every time we hear that the promised supply of weapons is delayed, every time there are doubts about the type of weapons for Ukraine, about the range or other quality characteristics, every time it means that Ukrainian soldiers are giving their lives so that we have this time, said the president. Ukrainian Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov apologized for his comment in an interview with a Spanish newspaper in which he called the number of killed Ukrainian soldiers less than the number of victims of the February earthquake in Turkey, reports Interfax Ukraine. He apologized to anyone in Ukraine and Turkey who was offended by his comment. The minister stressed that Ukrainians sympathize with the Turkish people, Earlier, Reznikov said that losses of the Ukrainian military in the war against the Russian aggressor were less than the number of victims of the February earthquake in Turkey. Slovakia has already sent to Ukraine all 13 promised MiG-29 fighter jets for countering the Russian invasion, reports European Pravda. According to Slovak Defense Minister Yaroslav Naď, after the first 4 fighter jets were handed over to Ukrainian pilots in March 2023, the remaining 9 aircraft were delivered by land. National nuclear generating company Energoatom assessed its losses from the war at about 32 billion hryvnia, which is $870 million, reports Ukrinform. This includes property lost at the occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and other facilities. At the same time, the company said that the size of losses and damage inflicted on Energoatom by Russia would be determined after the deoccupation. The Highlights from Ukraine podcast is a commercial initiative of just 2 people, and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.